I'd like to call to order this work session on July 21st at 6 p.m. Tonight, we are here to exploration of communication tools to facilitate council and city manager feedback. Been kind of working on this over the last year and a half and going through an interim and a new city manager. It's kind of been put on hold or delayed over time, and so we're back at it. Last meeting, I think we talked about Kim Holmes and Marissa Jacobs getting together, kind of working on this, putting something together. And so I'm going to turn it over to Marissa as she will begin.
So as Mayor mentioned, Councilor Holmes and I were tasked with exploring what the options are for us as council, given our one administrative or managerial responsibility is to manage and evaluate the role of the city manager. As we're doing this work, we also identified an opportunity to reground us in our ways of working and really regrounding in our roles and responsibilities as council and how that relates to the city manager role. And the information that we'll go over to this evening is a compilation of research that was done through our charter, what's coded in law, best practices in terms of ways of working. And then when halfway through, I'll turn the presentation over to Kim, where we'll talk about tools and feedback cadence. A lot of that research was done through LOC, CIS, and IMCYA. Is that right?
ICMA.
There we go, ICMA. So I'll go ahead and kick us off. So starting in our packet, it's page 4. There have been recent council and city manager interactions that highlighted an opportunity for us to realign on expectations. And as mentioned earlier, wanted to take us back before we dive into how we operate, like what are our roles and responsibilities. We've had this information given to us in various different ways over the last 6 months. And for me, I found this to be beneficial to reground in like what my role is as city council and how I need to work with staff, specifically the city manager. So moving on to slide 5. So roles of council and manager. So council, we're elected officials. We focus on policy development. We assess effectiveness of policies within our community. We act as a whole. We are not allowed to individually make decisions and represent that on behalf of the council. We need to debate to decide, and we need to accept decisions by the collective. Our role is also to build relationships, and we need to be mindful that we're not interfering with the day-to-day administration of the city business, and that we're not undermining the authority of the manager or the department heads. The manager role, city manager role, this is the role that we're able to appoint as the administrative head of our city government. The city manager is responsible for the day-to-day service delivery, policy implementation, and performance management that aligns with our policy goals. The manager is also held to fiscal responsibility and being a good steward of our monies, building stakeholder relationships within the city, county, and state, and also to inform council of affairs of needs in a timely manner.
Page 5.
It's the wrong part.
The one thing, Marissa, and I think I see it kind of later, but
Yeah.
the role of council too, I think is, and you have build relationships to maybe expand on what is our responsibility within the community to more of yes, or is this specifically with us and the city manager and the city role, or is also our role to listen to the community, get out in the community?
So I totally agree with that. The lens I took on this was really just more specific in terms of council staff relationships. But we can definitely, expand if we want to.
This is mostly how that relationship.
This is just really about us. This is to ground us in really the second half of this workshop.
Kind of our management responsibility.
Right.
Okay.
So moving on to page 6. So when we look at how council interacts with staff and or how council interacts with council, sort of organize some guardrails here on how we should together. So council working with council, we should review and adhere to the team agreement. The team agreement is attached to this deck. It was put together in 2023, and some of us were not a part of that. However, after reviewing the team agreement, I felt like it was really strong, and I think it's a good document for us to adhere to and how we conduct ourselves and with each other as well as with staff. And so I would encourage everyone to review that. I will not take time here because we have a lengthier conversation we need to get after, but it could be a good idea if the group agrees that we maybe have another session sometime this year where we look at just our team agreement and just, does it still make sense and does all those statements still ring true to everyone? In absence of that, though, I do think it's a solid argument to adhere to.
One thing is we do have turnover from time to time, and maybe it's like once you have 4 people that have not signed that one, maybe
Yeah.
that's a good time to review it because it's 4 new people or
Absolutely.
something.
It's important that we as council, when we're working with one another, that we know and practice our role responsibility. An example here would be like the daisy chain. If one counselor, right, it's like you gotta stop at 3. You shouldn't be going beyond that. So let's adhere to that. And then a call out here to adhering to sort of a few key procedures so that we're working effectively and being respectful of the role in which we sit to our constituents. So one, request of staff time for questions or research that we really need to send that to the city manager and to the mayor if via email, if we're not already asking for it during staff session, during council session. Approval of attorney time needs to be sent to the mayor and city manager for approval. We need to be good financial stewards, and the mayor and the city manager will know if there's something that needs attorney review, if it's already been in play or not.
But that, I mean, for like LOC or CIS, is that, since there is no financial cost there, is that you can go out there on it?
I could go there on my own. This is really specific towards like the dollars.
Yeah, we had an agreement with that before, and it was limited to like 1 hour per month per city council or something like that. It wasn't you have to seek approval.
I think we should bring that up for conversation because first off, if that was the agreement, then is it documented somewhere and is it stipulated? If it's not,
Yeah, it'll be at least in the minutes somewhere too. And there were other conflicts that were identified with having to get approval to go to the city attorney to beyond or absent of, like a full hour too. We can talk about that later though.
Yeah, and just in mind that at one, we had our attorney was kind of like had flat feet.
Mm-hmm.
Now.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
different.
Yeah.
So,
And I think my thoughts on that is that maybe it's already been answered, if you go to the attorney, it's like, well, Joe already came to me for that or someone else. And just by asking us, then maybe we would know. Same with me going to staff on something. It'd be, if I just go to Benny, he could say, oh, we've already got that answered. Someone else has the same question.
so we'll flag that as a follow-up. And then if we as a council, if we are going to be talking about a specific topic and one of us receives information, materials from someone that's poignant to the conversation, we have an obligation to share that information with all councilors in advance of that conversation.
Whereas if I receive something from a citizen and I go to city manager and the police chief or something, but it's never gonna come to us. I'm just
Right.
dealing with them. I'll just hand it off and let it go. I don't need to bring that to you.
Just being careful not to create a quorum though, with that. though,
If it
too.
does come to council, I'll make sure I give everybody everything that I would give it.
Right, and when you send that could also be determined, whether it's just a document you're sending out, or if it's just something you bring up to the council meeting as a subject, or, I don't know, that'd be up to you as President Miller mentioned. Just cognizant of it's gonna create that more create conversation going.
And you had said
Keep that.
3, working with 3, that kind of scares me too, because with that serial meeting, you may think it's just 3, but if you say something to Ben and had mentioned it to the 4th, they can link those together. So that's why I liked having the 2 of you kind of, because work on it and just 2 and bring all your information. That should be safe.
Uh, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong. If you distribute information to all of us, that doesn't create a quorum issue, right?
Correct. That's how it's been interpreted thus far.
Okay.
The OGC has been a little more strict lately, so we're trying
Hmm.
to be cognizant of, they had talked about potentially throwing the city manager as well. They have not yet. But I'll keep you up to date if that does change. I just know that has been a conversation of, because there could be a chance that someone's trying to work around that by going through the city manager to create conversations. So it could still be linked back if it comes across as having color of trying to go around the quorum. But yeah, it's just to distribute information. We're not having discussions and trying to come up with decisions or deliberate on that. That's a safe way.
Yeah, it seems like the line would be like you can't share other counselors' opinions or thoughts on it because then it could be
Right.
construed as potentially leading, I guess you would say.
Right. And then so it's good practice, as usually mentioned, do not respond.
Right.
At all. I mean, if you're just getting information, just keep it as information. It's not having
If you are
conversation.
asking us for a feedback or something, that's okay, but just don't reply all and then give it to you and you not make sure.
Right. To me, if I'm collecting information, it's not trying to skew your, because you guys are going to make the decision. We're trying to like say, well, this counselor said this, and trying to create something outside of meeting. That's where it really gets into problems. The whole idea of the OGC's ethics is they're just trying to make sure that discussions and deliberations and decisions are not made outside of here. That the public has a right to know how it, not just what the decision was, but how that decision came to be.
So then looking at how some guardrails for council working with staff. If staff brings concerns to council, or a counselor, we should redirect those concerns back to the city manager and notify the city manager, as well as that individual. Sharing, asking them to speak with the city manager, their concerns addressed. We should refrain from requesting information directly from staff members, so like should not be an update on XYZ development. Should be asking for that during session. And that should be our best practice, is whenever possible requesting information of staff during session. And lastly, we should be curious. We should ask questions, because we're not in the day-to-day, we're not managing the day-to-day. It's good for us to ask questions to seek clarity, to test our understandings or validate our understandings, or validate other citizens' concerns or complaints that may have come to us, seeking to understand.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
So I want to be sure that we're, to the extent we can, we're not creating barriers here. So what if a community member comes to us and says, hey, I have this issue or whatever, and I still would think it would be okay if we emailed Ben and asked him for clarification or status on something, because I don't want to create a barrier for us to try to be responsive to our community members though too.
So is this in particular, is this because of, it says request information of staff during session? Is that sort of where it's trying to?
Right, yeah, because I'm
So-
getting the impression that we can't basically ask for updates or take issues to the city manager unless it's in like an open session, but
No,
there are some things that are inappropriate to bring up in open session too, so
agree.
yeah.
This is specific to staff. So us like interacting with department heads or staff outside of city manager. So I'm really was trying to be very intentional about segregating out the role of the city manager and how we interact versus our role interacting with staff.
How, in your mind, do we still build a team environment and not create barriers to getting things done in collaboration if we try to put a wall between us and staff?
That's what the role of the city manager is for.
I understand that, but that's not my question. My question specifically is, how do we not create walls in between council and staff and foster a collaborative work environment?
I guess I'm just not understanding, like, it's not our role and responsibility to foster a collaborative work environment with staff. That's the role of the city manager. And our interactions are with the city manager. I mean, yes, we should be polite and we should interact and collaborate in sessions with staff when they're here. But when it's outside of session, it should not be individual counselors working directly with staff. Unless there is some special committee that is put together with, you know, as a counselor or two and maybe someone specific in staff. But how I understood and based of my readings and research is that my role would not be working directly with Lori.
I'm not talking about working directly with Lori. I'm talking about simple questions that may be pretty innocent or.
Can you give me an example?
Well, I have some like Dave, I need to email him something and just a quick question, but do I just email Ben and then Ben has to then email Dave and then Dave has to email back, or can I email them both at the same time? Just on, hey, community member was wondering if this had got mowed yet. And they've asked.
What's your preference?
Right. How I typically operate with that is as long as you keep me involved. I think what it says in our code, the municipal code, it says if it's going to be under an hour, keep any of that information. It's going to take more of that needs to be brought to session. But that as long as you're including me, and I tell my staff the same thing. If the counselor tells you, just let me know, because if it does get to a point where it's like, well, hold on, this is getting into like too much staff work and they're feeling pressured, then I can step in and say, well, they have this workload, let's take it off. No, or I can make sure that the answer, if it's been already answered somewhere else, that I can bring in additional information. Because sometimes you talk to one director, that's one piece of it, but there's public works that's also part of it, or the police that's also part of that. So keeping me in the loop just helps me manage their workload and the information flow to you guys.
But I do like we are trying to build a team and we do want to keep them feeling that we're all one team and we're not against the staff, or we're there. The questions we're asked are usually good to, build that relationship. And maybe there's events, we get together, we do stuff where you bring us in. You're the one that is in charge of building that relationship and that team.
Right. And typically the other route to go with it is just to send me the request. I can get it to the right appropriate staff member to respond to and then get it back to you as well. And it just depends on the situation. Like sometimes you run into a staff member,
right,
and you're asking questions. Just let me know. Hey, I ran into them. I asked this. Not a big deal. And the same thing they do to us. But in general, if you have a question, send it my way, and I can send it off to whoever. Unless there's like I say, I'm not super concerned. I haven't really seen the extreme use of that either way. But that is the concern. The only concern is when you start directly emailing stuff. Sometimes they feel really pressured to do something. And if I'm not included, and it's even harder to pack that if I have to step in between there too.
I think it's like if there's staff time involved, and that's where I definitely think about it, email you. And if we see him at an open session, obviously that's open, but if we see him as something in there, you can ask him a question, but then later let him know, spoke to you.
Fair.
Yes.
So I think we should agree to copy you and in the emails.
Right.
For example, I was thinking another example that I would like. For example, I'm with the EDC committee and NJ sending out informations, and I respond back information. I mean, I don't think you want to be CC'd on that, even if you're already there.
Right.
If you're there.
It is, and to the other step for my own workload, I have to sit there and play secretary to send it out. So
Right.
sometimes just as long as I'm included in that, so I can
Right.
at least know what's going on.
But in general,
Right.
it would be great practice just to copy you in an email. And we
Right.
can all agree to do that.
And so the refrain from requesting information directly from staff members without also, notifying city manager, do something to where I can send it to both of them. And then Ben could make the, Dave, I'll take care of it, or,
So it's just like if you look at the other column where it says adhere to procedure, requests of staff time for questions, research sent to city manager and mayor. So it's like, if you ran into Dave and you had a question, oh yeah, I'll follow up with you. It's like, okay, email Dave, copy the city manager. And then at your discretion, determine if the mayor needs to be on there or not. I think it's a way for us to keep open communication and transparency and what it is so that city manager knows like where the questions, issues, or interests lie. And then understands like the amount of time, potential time that it could involve staff to respond back to us. He needs to quarterback with like 3 different departments to get an answer back.
yeah, I'm sure we're all asking Dave, how's the basalt well? Then it takes him, has to respond 7 times, or ask Lori all the time about how's this development going? How's this? And if we're all asking, then it does take time. Just ask Ben, and then he.
So next slide 7 in the packet. So the impact of our interactions. So why this is important is when we stay working within our roles, there's a lot of good things that come out of this. But when we don't, it's like we're immediately chipping away at all the positive work and intent and relationship building we're trying to do. So when we stay within our lanes and in our roles, we're building trust, we're having clear communication. Hopefully we're having smoother decision making, we're operating more efficiently, we're in alignment with our goals, we're being fiscally responsible, and we're having improved service delivery to our citizens. When we don't, it's just the complete opposite. There's mistrust between council, within council, with staff, with the city manager. We have confusing communication, might be reluctant to decide. We come across disorganized. We may be entering misalignment with our goals. We're being fiscally irresponsible, and then this could be showing up to our citizens and services are being offered to us. So the whole intent of just sort of regrounding us in our roles is so that we can build good relationship and strong communication. This is still a new relationship. Ben is just about shy of a year of being involved, and we are still new as a forming team. And it takes time. And so we're going to have bumps, but I think if we can always go back to, okay, what's my role? What's my responsibility? And look at our team agreement and adhere to those 3 pillars. I think that gives us a good foundation to be able to develop into a higher performing team, which will also enable us to be able to have stronger feedback tools with one another.
It's great. I'm real going to be into positive too. These are all opportunities for growth and to stay positive. We all donate a lot of our time and energy to this, and I think we all want to enjoy it. And if you don't do these, it starts to become not fun and enjoyable, and you don't get things done or good things done. So I want to definitely say it's all positive. Good intentions are always thought of. So I think we do need to look at this, especially as we get new counselors too, to bring them into the team, get them to understand our culture and have that good teamwork culture.
So now I'll hand it over to Kim, and we can skip to slide 9, Susan. I've already did slide 8. Oh, okay. One more. One more. There you go.
All
Council
right.
opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for that setup, and thank you for working collaboratively on this effort, which is really an important effort. I think this would be the 3rd time going through annual review, and each time we go through it, we look at the tools, we struggle, I think the city manager questions how meaningful it's going to be. We're questioning how effective it can be. And every time we swear we can do better. And so taking advantage of we've got about 6 months, I think, until we're going to repeat your evaluation. I think we have the right mix of talent and experience on this council to come up with something that's really going to be meaningful and effective. Councillor Jacobs outlined kind of the roles and the responsibilities of the council city manager form of government. It's a really powerful form of government and partnership. The city manager brings management and public oversight skills that none of us have, right? We come, we go, none of us can do the job that the city manager does as the executive. We are, however, accountable to the citizens who have elected us. And we do need to make sure that we have the right communications methods in place, up and down, across this DS, and with the city manager, to make sure that we can be accountable and we are successful. Because ultimately, if there are issues and we are not able to sufficiently address them, we are the ones that will be held accountable. So I think it's really important that we learn to get this right. In doing some of this research, reaching out to the League of Oregon Cities, their first response was, this is something that every city struggles with. We're actually having a session on this in the fall. And I said, well, great. Can you provide me some information in advance of that? We're trying to nail this down. And when I talked with the person at CIS, who was incredibly helpful, she herself was an assistant city manager in Central Oregon and went through this and really had a range of tools to offer. She's willing to continue this journey with us to review those tools that we settle on. But she said, this is the perfect time, right? Because you're able to identify the priorities of council, clearly communicate that to the city manager, and give them sufficient time to respond. Because she said, the worst case scenario for a city manager is you get to that evaluation moment and Joe says, well, these are my priorities. And Jeanette says, well, these are my priorities. And the city manager says, I didn't know these priorities, right? No one had clearly communicated these to me. So it really, I think by doing this and identifying the right tools, it's going to benefit all of us to really be a much more successful team for staff, for the community, for the city manager, for our experience. So this really is an opportunity. And as I started to look at, okay, where have these other tools been deficient? What I think became really clear is that there is no single tool that's going to work. I think what Councillor Jacobs and I needed to do was kind of back up and say, where are there blind spots that are created by the city manager council form of government? And that is the challenge. It does create blind spots because there are intentionally some firewalls and barriers to allow the city manager to do his job and us to serve in more of a legislative role. So kind of two key questions emerged. So how does council provide meaningful feedback to the city manager to ensure their success? And how does council have the information to conduct a meaningful assessment as well? And so kind of, the goal of what I hope we can achieve here is to create a comprehensive feedback loop. It's going to be a multi-pronged approach, but in the end, it'll build trust, create quality communication between the city manager and council. It is a new relationship. I will say I myself, Ben, we've had the opportunity to meet a few times, but, haven't yet had a chance to, I think, establish a regular feedback loop. And we're probably kind of in the same spot, many of us. And this will allow us to set some consistent expectations for both council and the city manager, his expectations of us, to ensure success of the city. So we can go to the next slide. And this is where I think council's input and city manager's input is going to be very valuable. So when we were thinking about the three areas that we do need to build some communication feedback opportunities around, we need productive communication between council and the city manager. Really, that needs to be a two-way street. We need to be able to raise concerns, issues, questions with Ben and vice versa. And in doing so and doing that regularly, building a relationship that fosters trust. So that's opportunity area number one that we think about how we accomplish that. Number two, mechanism for council to understand staff feedback. And I think this is where there becomes that a real blind spot in this form of government. And so what we need to think about is how do we get insight into how the city manager is leading the staff? How do we create opportunities for staff to elevate issues that could be consequential to the long-term success of the city? And what are mechanisms to alert council to issues that council can offer consultation to the city manager for resolution? You know, in my role with my work, we crowdsource challenges with each other. I don't have all of the relevant experiences sometimes to address the things that come up that we have to deal with, and the city manager might be in the same situation. Creating that opportunity, if a situation arises, Ben can bring that to us and say, all right, here's what I'm thinking of doing. Are there any other suggestions? Creating more of a dynamic dialogue as if needed as things come up. So that would be opportunity area number two. And then number three, develop a meaningful tool for council to assess performance of the city manager, to identify, so we can clearly identify council priorities for the city manager, for city manager to identify their performance priorities and highlight those for us, and facilitate alignment for the continued success of the city. So I guess at this point, I would pause for any discussion or questions, but really to city manager and council, are these the right areas to focus on to build the communication tools around? Does this sufficiently address some of the blind spots that we feel and have experienced?
Yeah, I think they're very general, but I think they are the over the general categories that we need to focus on. One thing that's been apparent in my time on council too, and just growing up here too, is we're a small city, we're limited resources, so we don't have the staff to fulfill, all these specialized or niche areas that some of the bigger municipalities have too. So for me, one of the things I think is important too is making sure that the city manager knows that he can come to, individual counselors if he does feel like, hey, this counselor has a specialized area of whatever that might be valuable to help him make decisions. But I just really want to make sure that whatever we come up with here is collaborative and does respect that we are a very small city with very limited resources, and we should all try to contribute to the well-being and the overall success of our city. So I just don't want to create barriers that unintentionally really create a problem for us being able to do the best thing for our community. So whatever we come up here, and I think that's in your middle category there too, I do want to make sure that we do foster that sort of relationship with our city manager. That doesn't mean that they're coming to us for everything. It just means like if there's something that comes up and you want to bounce something off us, or we have a specialized area of expertise that could help, we want to be that resource and help, because that's why we're here. We're here in general to, make our community better.
Councilor Santiago.
First, I'd like to say thank you to Councilor Holmes and Councilor Jacobs for all the work that they did on this. My question is, I'm very curious on what you, Ben, think on the option number 2 with a mechanism for council to understand staff feedback. I wanted to get your input, and I'm not sure if this is the time to do so.
Yeah, the next slide will talk specifically about some suggestions of how we kind of operationalize that concept. But is that even is that the right challenge statement?
Yeah, so I just want to get your thoughts on that.
I guess my response on that was, what I've heard since I've been here is it's a very important aspect from the council, and an area that you're feeling a lack of. Whether from past experience or current or whatever. So it does sound like finding the correct mechanism to get there is important, whatever that may be. I don't know what that is yet, but finding something that is meaningful and impactful to help the council, to help me, to help staff, while respecting the appropriate priorities and roles. Absolutely. I think it's a good way to go. I mean, I had talked with Councilor Holmes. We did a one-on-one a couple months ago, and we talked about different things. I mean, whether it's I know some cities do like an employee survey, and it's regular. It's not really part of this, but you can get feedback from employee surveys, and then all of a sudden you have feedback of how the organization is running. Or we had talked about 3 cities. There are different mechanisms, but just finding the right one that fits what you guys need, what our staff need is, yeah, whatever that is. And if it doesn't work, we'll try something new.
I appreciate that willingness, yep, to explore, and we might not nail it right the first time, right? But we'll have the feedback mechanism to talk about that and fine tune it as needed, so.
We do have a lot of historical things that have happened too that I think this council is very interested in preventing. Because in all reality, the disruption that I'm aware of hasn't been from, various council members staying within their lane. I guess that's kind of a bad way of saying it. The biggest disruption and the most costly thing to the city has been mistakes that have been made by management and the litigation that has occurred too. So for me, I really do want to figure out a way that staff does feel like they can have a alternate route to report concerns and issues that could ultimately end up being the biggest disruptor of government services in the city and taking away, well, costing the city a lot of money too. I don't know what the answer to that is, but there does have to be a way for, especially for liability reasons for staff. And this doesn't pertain to you, like specifically, don't think you've done anything that creates this concern. That's not, it is literally history that has this concern that I've always had since I've been on council. It's how do we avoid those major disruptions and extremely costly. I mean, the police department was a dumpster fire for years because of, this is my opinion, because of repeated mismanagement. And we don't want to go back there. We want to keep continuing going up. But if you look at why those things happened, we really have to look at, okay, how do we make sure that that never happens again? How is there a way to report these concerns and an alternate method that still allows us to stay, council and, our lanes and everything? But I don't know. I don't know what the answer, but that is one of my biggest concerns. Just sharing that as a
I'm hoping through the communication and the two-way street, and we're building that maybe that's how we can avoid them, is not even get on that street, not get heading towards those things. I mean,
Right. Sorry.
no, I was gonna say, we're constantly always gotta be working to stay there, because it just takes one little slip up to all of a sudden be going the other way. So we can't just rest on our laurels and think everything's great. We gotta constantly be working on this.
be
Forefront.
proactive.
And in January, one of the efforts we're trying to help provide alternate routes. In January, I had split up the duties of HR, not just to fully rest on me, but Susan being part of personnel issues and recruitment, and then NJ being on the side of health benefits and wellness. And there's other categories, but kind of separate those out. But really, for this discussion, where if there is something, it's not just straight up your management route where management can hide at those things, but that we actually have an HR. So anytime there is a report, we can either go to HR directly, or we try to involve her anytime it goes to management too. So there's always HR involved and aware of what's going on with the situation. So there's documentation. And the other route that if you're like, I don't trust my manager, I'm going to go to somebody else who can actually report this. When it comes to the typical performance, we have our own performance process, but if it really did come down to a legal or some bigger, that is something we'd have that other person who could really escalate to, either calling to our attorney, to CIS, or if needed, alerting the council depending on the situation. So Councilor Jacobs had asked the question recently about, what if there's an issue between me and HR or other things, what would look at. So we actually sent that out to our city listserv out there to just get input from larger cities and smaller cities, what they've found successful. I work with Sharon all the time, who you mentioned earlier with CIS. Sharon,
She's great.
She's awesome. Yeah, I call her. She's a great resource as long as it's best practices. she can't give any direct stuff, but and I've been introducing Susan to all those contacts as well, so she's getting training and support and help. So it was kind of funny because she actually sent that email out, and someone came back, "Hey, if you ever need to talk," like thinking that there's a problem with the manager at the point, but No, we're just looking for process.
Yeah,
You know, the one thing I'm hearing, I've heard some of this because I'm in contact with you quite a bit.
Right.
And so I'm hearing a lot of the things that you're doing, you know, in all the departments and grants and all these different things. And I think it's important we all hear it. Whether it's all in a group or maybe it's in our evaluation in our executive session, when that all finally comes out, I'm going to bring everything that I've heard from. And in that way, we all get the information. And so we're not all wondering what's going on. How is morale? How's it? I mean, you tell one, let us know when these things are, when you're hearing and you're talking to these people, it's important that we all hear it.
great. All right. Well, we can move on to the next slide and talk about some of the tools that this council might want to consider employing. As I said, this is certainly a multi-pronged approach here. So starting with the first category, really fostering good city council and city manager feedback. I think, Ben has always had an open door policy that we can have, conversations, one-on-ones, but I think we really need to make sure that we're all doing that and all investing in that and be accountable to that. And so I would ask council to consider, a required cadence, whether it's once a quarter, once a month, whatever, we agree is appropriate, that we establish those times. We meet with Ben. If it can't be in person, do pick up the phone, have a conversation, check in with each other. And if, counselors aren't doing what we're all expected to do, let the mayor know, and, the mayor will have a conversation. So if that could become something that we agree upon, I think it will go a long way, just in terms of, I've always enjoyed, the opportunity to meet with you and learn. I think we would all benefit from it.
Counselor Santiago.
So just to clarify something, would this be something that is also implemented, because, we would love Ben to be here but he's not gonna be here forever. So to be implemented into part of the city manager's duties, like make sure that, and I don't remember what they are, but to implement, to meet one-on-one with counselors. So is it just for Ben, or is this in general, we're adding it to the job description?
I don't think it's Ben's job to chase this down. It's our job to
Right.
proactively.
But that's something that, because everybody's different, so he has an open door policy, but the next person that has that position with the, I'm not saying that they're the same person. So I'm just wanting to clarify, is this something that we can implement into the system?
Vote on a resolution and put this in, or
I don't think it has to be that formal. I think so first and foremost, it is in the job description that he's talking with us.
It is.
Yes. Second, this is more about the role than agnostic. And if we really want to be a high performing team, sorry to speak in my corporate talk, but having standing meetings is like foundational to building relationships and building trust. And so the thought here is establish a meeting cadence that works best for each counselor individually with the city manager. So Kim's point, maybe a counselor only wants to meet once a quarter or once a month. Maybe someone wants to meet every week. But that you agree to that meeting cadence. And whether you use that full time to talk about business matters, you use it how you see fit, because you could have nothing to talk about, but you may just have 15 minutes of like, hey, how's your family doing? Oh, hey, how did that trip go? It's it's having that standing time to be able to connect is really sort of the.
And at the same
key.
time, respect their time. I mean,
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
like any other meeting.
right.
Like, okay, we have this standing meeting, but we really don't have anything to talk about, but let's just touch base for 5-10 minutes and then you get protected time back.
And I know sometimes as needed, they'll come up as needed too, and it might be two of us. If two of us, someone raised a question to me and I wasn't really sure, then we both can go in. That way you don't go individually at that time, but 2 on 1 sometimes, if you both have the same issues. You gotta be careful, talking to all of us. But the one-on-one kind of a scheduled thing, I think would be important. I used to try to do it around our meetings, so then we could just kind of go over the agenda to make sure I understand, I gotta run a meeting, I want to do it within the time limit. How long is this gonna take? So those always kind of work well.
Great. So that's kind of helping to better establish that individual relationship and trust building at that level. A second tool opportunity area in the council city manager feedback would be having quarterly executive sessions to exchange information, review our priorities and goals. Ben can provide us ongoing updates, highlight the things that he thinks are important, ask those questions if he does want our feedback in certain areas. And Ben, I think you said this is something that you had in practice in a prior city and worked well.
Yeah, it depends on, I mean, we started going twice a year just because there wasn't a lot every 3 months to cover, not a lot changes usually in the city. But sometimes there is. I mean, if there's a lot going on, maybe that scales up and scales down. But at the same time, they always made it so formal that it just ended up taking a lot of my time to get it set up. If it's just a quick check-in like we did, if it was every quarter and it's like, hey, not a lot of talk, not a lot of updates, but let's just have a quick check-in, 15 minutes, it doesn't have to be a big deal. And maybe they just didn't do it very well. It could be something to start with, see how that works here.
Yeah, do we kind of come prepared with, we all have a question or two or something we want to know about, as well, and we can bring those up?
Well, just to be level set here, the executive sessions would be related to performance.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we
Gotta
could
be
still
pretty
do
specific.
the rest of that stuff outside of executive session, but
And I think when we kind of, later we talk about next steps and kind of identifying those priority areas, perhaps in executive session, say we've got 6 priority areas, you tackle 1 or 2 that you want to highlight in that session, right? Maybe there's some, recent developments or projects in that area or new wins for the team. And you say, I'm going to provide updates on these 2 focus areas or these 2 goal areas. So it could be, structured minimally, and then it's in Ben's court. Or, this could be, I think, a really good area for you to provide some feedback and what you think would be a meaningful use of that time for us. Just making sure that we have some time set aside and it's carved out so we know it's there. We use it if we need it, and if we don't, we move through it really quickly.
Before we move on really quick, another example of how we can use it. Sometimes instead of being sort of forward looking, maybe we use it as an opportunity to reflect on how a past, say, exercise went. And I'll just give an example. Let's say we just came out of budget and we want to have a conversation about like how the budget process went and do that in a way in executive session. So that, to me, I think we could use it as 1 or 2. Like you can, let's do a review of, okay, we just got through a couple major hurdles. Let's talk about those. How did they go? How can we improve for next time? And then I'm not sure if the future, if doing just the update, this is where we're going to need your guidance on the executive session. Like
I said, that's where it
exactly how
became a
that
little
needs to
bit,
get crafted. I think
right? Because
we
every
need some help
3
there.
months, that's where it became a little bit
Mm.
onerous because it became limited on just the performance side that we talked about, which is in the executive session. So it's to be determined or scale up or down. It works.
yeah, and I can't imagine that we're gonna be needing executive session every quarter, but we can, table it for now or not table it.
See how today's
Placeholder.
go.
Let's run, let's
Mhm.
run it a couple quarters and
Yeah.
let's run it for 2 to 3 quarters and let's see what happens.
Mhm.
And then we can do sort of a check and readjust and see where we go.
So welcome any additional ideas on tools that we could employ for addressing that kind of communication opportunity area. Second, for staff feedback. So determine mechanism for staff to raise concerns that affect the success of the city. I think Ben's already talked about some of the strategies that he's employing to create that communication loop internally. And so I don't know if there's others this group wants to consider. Second, fold staff feedback into the annual assessment process. This is one in particular that CIS had suggested. the way that, I think she had ran Prineville,
Redmond.
Redmond.
yeah, sure.
Yeah, Redmond. So she kind of ran the process as the assistant city manager. And so council would create an assessment tool highlighting the focus areas that council agreed upon, then asking a few questions related to those areas. And then staff would have an opportunity to answer that and provide that feedback to a third party that's consolidated in a way that it's anonymized, right? So we're not able to directly relate feedback back to individuals. And then the city manager would repeat the same assessment. And we get to see kind of how the city manager is viewing performance relative to the staff feedback. And then that just becomes a discussion point, right? That a tool that we use, and then council can go through the same exercise. So you kind of have 3 different data points. And if there's misalignment, just digging in. Sometimes it's perception. Sometimes it's, communication. But it allows council to work with the city manager to identify those areas and offer solutions. So that was one suggestion on that one.
Can I
Does-
clarify? Sorry.
Go ahead, no.
Can I clarify something really quick? I want to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So the staff feedback would be based on a number of categories. We would receive staff feedback on those categories, and then the city manager would be providing the same feedback on those categories, and then we would compare to see where the differences are, if
Mhm.
any. That's
And the
interesting.
third party takes them and just kind of summarizes them and does kind of averages them or looks at things. I mean, it's,
Yeah, so each tool that she provided as an example had both, it was qualitative and quantitative. So you would be able to probably get like a numeric value and then also, just cut and paste the comments. I don't think we'd want anyone to like editorialize the comments.
Right.
Right, I was actually sitting with Sharon Harris at the OCCMA conference, and he had sent an email. She's like, "I'm talking to Kim." I was like, "Oh," and it was during a performance management session.
Okay.
Happened to be with Sharon, so it was really great because she had another HR person from Newport, I believe, sitting at the table too. So I actually asked about, like, so because I mentioned some of my concerns about anonymity and not anonymity or fear of retaliation or all these other things.
Yeah.
How do we mitigate those? And that was one of the things she had mentioned was just. She's like, "Oh, we just always have the HR person internally," and that's what they said. They consolidate it so that all the comments are there. They put it all together, but it's not directly tied like a stream of answers where you can like connect this one to this one, to this one. It was just feedback in these sections. That was a summary of all of that, and it seemed to mitigate a lot of those concerns.
Yeah, and I did ask a question, a concern that you had raised, Ben, in our discussion. Sometimes this becomes a platform for, say, if someone just is venting, right? And so you're not getting like how good of the feedback is the quality of the feedback do you get with these tools? And she said, oh yeah, some people do that, but then they're outliers, right? So I think we have a broad enough pool of staff that we would be able to detect outliers.
And to be clear, this wouldn't just be department heads, this would be the entire city staff.
Redmond did direct reports separately and then staff, but I would imagine their staff is much larger. I don't think you could conduct it anonymously doing 2 different levels.
So just do
in staff.
one level.
I would say one level here.
Just do staff and department heads as one.
Yeah.
I think that's the
probably
best
what we
way
have
to
do.
protect anonymity, so everyone feels comfortable providing feedback.
Do we feel like staff would be comfortable doing it that way, or is there like a third-party independent firm that we could retain on an annual basis to receive that data and put it together?
you may not got many to input, you might get a few that would respond.
I just want to make sure that we're encouraging and receiving full participation. There's not any sort of hesitation because of confidentiality or whatever.
Yeah, I think it does have to be voluntary, right? I don't think you
Yes.
can compel people to participate, but we can certainly take the steps that would encourage participation.
I think it depends on the questions and what we are asking of them.
Mhm.
We want to,
And we can use an online tool.
Yeah.
And then that online tool will be able to collate the information together, right? So it's just really a person
Survey
going in on
monkey
the
type
back
of
end,
thing.
right? And just pulling the information. And there's still that anonymity, because if we're gonna say go out to
Yeah.
30 people, you figure the goal is always like, if you get 60%, that's amazing. We got 50%, that's 15 out of 30.
Well, just making the effort to do it to show that we actually care
Yeah.
too is, I think very big.
Yeah, and I think goes back to one of your points about how do we create show that we're supportive of staff and whatnot. I think this is the avenue and path that we're able to do that in a way that maintains the leadership at the city manager level, but enables us to do our management responsibility.
Yeah, I think it eliminates blind spots and improves transparency.
Question, so you guys already saw that tool or have an example of that tool from Redmond or?
Yeah, so she sent us 2 different examples. And so we can circulate those.
I intentionally did not put them in here right now because we knew we needed to get through this content first.
Okay.
So, because we knew we'd probably squirrel.
Okay.
But yeah, that will be part of the next steps.
Okay,
There's
and that's
actually,
great.
yep, and there's actual homework.
Yep.
Right.
So
Yep.
let Kim get through.
Okay, we've got 4 minutes. I
4
think I can do
minutes.
this. So then,
fine.
kind of the tool that we would create for staff to provide feedback really would be the performance assessment tool. Then that we all go through that exercise and then have that information and provide feedback to Ben at performance time. So we can go to next steps.
That's due basically in 6 months from now. You're saying.
6 months. Yeah. So we have time to get it right, but
We wanna get it
obviously we wanna
right, yeah.
communicate it.
We
to
need
Ben
to-
well in advance.
Our goal is to try to nail this in the next 2 months. Like
Yeah.
ideally, that would be ideal.
Yeah. And so, okay, the homework. So 7/22 through 8/4, so that'll take us to our next meeting. We'll circulate and have everyone review the sample manager evaluations that we've received and bring recommendations for the functional areas we want to build the assessment around. So is a functional area, the annual budgeting process is a functional area. Leadership and communication styles is a functional area. Responsiveness to citizen inquiries and issues. So I would ask that each counselor come back kind of with what are your functional priority areas that you would want to see the assessment built around. Then in that meeting, we'll discuss those functional areas and hopefully land those. And then we can then start working on what are kind of the best questions to start to get information around performance and how well things are working around those functional areas. And then Sharon did note, this was news to me, that if you change a city manager's assessment tool, you have to open it up for public comment, have a public comment process and period. Maybe check that out. See if that's true. She said they have in the past. No one ever bothers to comment on the city manager assessment tool, but you have to afford the opportunity. So if we can stay in this sequence, hopefully by early September, we can have a tool in place.
Okay, so
There's some wiggle room. Will give us some wiggle room. This is aggressive for us, but
we'll put it on the August 4th agenda, a little section there for some discussion on the regular meeting.
can we put it in the work session?
We have an urban renewal agency meeting at 6. That we have to look at a grant process. It might take an hour. We'll discuss.
Okay.
The meeting doesn't have a lot in the meeting, so there's not
Okay.
a lot there.
So for the homework, I'll send out the email to
Okay.
council and it will have the current job description. So you use that as our baseline as well as the 2 examples. And and I'll put in the email too, in addition to like what Kim explained, identifying functional areas, also take a look at the evaluation scale. There's 2 different ones. And let's also try to land that as well.
Great. And if you have any questions, go directly to like Marissa. Don't reply all, but if there's any.
Send it to me and Kim.
And we'll include Ben as
Ben,
well,
yeah.
if you want
Yeah.
to provide your feedback.
Okay?
Yeah.
We're good? All right. Meeting adjourned. 15.
We did it. 15.
Dinner, is it here yet? Oh, we have